We have a major Toronto Raptors trade update. As we all know, there have been a ton of reports and news coming out regarding Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, veterans on this Toronto Raptors team. But Chris Boucher is probably the most valuable guy that's playing the best for the Toronto Raptors that is a trade chip for this Raptor squad, being an expiring contract, being a guy that is putting up really solid stats, and frankly, is a guy that's a little bit older in regards to the Toronto Raptors timeline. So it's been a surprise to not see more reports come out regarding Chris Boucher and his trade status entering this year's trade deadline. However, that has all changed today as we had some news drop regarding the trade status, teams that are interested in Chris Boucher, and frankly, you saw it in the thumbnail, the Nuggets being reported as a suitor, as a team that's interested in Chris Boucher, leads to a ton of possibilities for the Toronto Raptors and Nuggets to make a deal that frankly makes a ton of sense for both teams. So we're going to break down what these reports are saying, what the latest intel is on Chris Boucher and the Denver Nuggets, and frankly, why I expect the Nuggets to be the perfect trade partner for the Toronto Raptors entering the trade deadline this year. So lots of stuff to break down in this video, but before we do, folks, again, if you guys are part of the 67% of our viewers that haven't hit the subscribe button just yet, and you want to stay up to date with everything that's going on with this Toronto Raptors team, I mean, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. We got a lot of stuff happening with this Raptors squad here over the next little while. But let's dive into the news. Let's dive into the madness, because frankly, there's a lot of stuff going on, and there hasn't been a ton of news before right now regarding Chris Boucher, but we did have a little breakdown a couple of weeks ago from Michael Grange breaking down the Chris Boucher trade market. This isn't the new reports, but this gives a little bit of context to what's going on. So, of course, Chris Boucher has shown some great glimpses over the course of the season, but the roster's gotten healthier, and Boucher is back to where he was a season ago, on the fringes of Raptors head coach Darko Rajakovic's rotation. And given he turns 32 in January and is in the last year of his contract, it's hard to imagine the Raptors standing in the way of a Chris Boucher trade. So again, nothing too novel there. Grange went on to say, making it that much more likely is that his $11 million salary fits nearly for a bunch of teams trade exceptions. So the market is potentially a bit wider for him than it might be otherwise. The flip side is that he has known Boucher has been available for a while, for close to a year now, and an Eastern Conference executive said the other day that if there was a big demand for Chris Boucher, he wouldn't be on the Raptors right now. So basically, that said, he's healthy, he's durable, he can shoot a little bit, he's fearless, and he's still turn a game upside down like few others can. For the right price of a future second-round pick, he's hardly a gamble for a team trying to squeeze its way into the postseason and secure a home seed. So I'll miss the guy for sure if he goes. And I'll certainly miss Chris Boucher as well if he does end up getting dealt, because, again, he's been on this team for a long while. He's the last remaining piece that won an NBA championship for the Toronto Raptors on that championship-winning squad in 2019. He always brings the right energy, always brings the right hustle. No matter where he is in the Raptors pecking order in terms of rotation, in terms of status, he just always plays his heart out. So I love Chris Boucher. I'm not here actively pushing for the Raptors to immediately make a trade, but in terms of the direction, in terms of where the Raptors are going, the timelines, everything that's going on, it just makes sense to get a little bit of value, because again, Chris Boucher is putting up way better stats than guys like Kelly Olynyk. I guess Kelly Olynyk shooting a higher percentage from three. Bruce Brown is more of a track record on a championship-winning squad, whatever. But Boucher this season's averaging 10 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 34% from the three-point line. And it's just a guy that any single night can really just be good, dominant. It looks like today is his birthday, so happy birthday to Chris Boucher as well. So, shout out to him. Just looking at the age and dates. He's 32 years old now at this point. So Chris Boucher, I think, is a valuable trade piece just in general, but basically, you can especially say that given the current climate of the NBA, because the cap has handcuffed a ton of teams across the NBA, and this is where the Denver Nuggets interest comes to mind. So basically, we got from Ian Begley, who's inside across the NBA, Chris Boucher has fans within the organization, and essentially saying that the Nuggets heading into this year's trade deadline, in the context of what you're saying, are targeting Chris Boucher. They're interested in bringing this guy in. So that was the implications of what's happening there, and it makes sense, right? You look at the stats, you look at what he's able to provide, and the big thing about it is he's a guy that cap-wise, opens things up because he is a free agent at the end of the summer, and you can probably bring him back at a fairly reasonable contract given his production. Like, he is a guy that can be a rotation player on a very good team. I mean, we could take a look at what he did to the Cleveland Cavaliers the other night. I mean, I'll have it on playing in the background. This dude was knocking down threes, was able to cook against some of the best teams in the NBA. So, Chris Boucher, and any given night, can be very, very effective out there for the Toronto Raptors. That is no doubt. That is no, surprise. That's not news to anyone. But the big thing about it, right, because he's a good basketball player, he's not old over the hill by any means, but the big thing is his salary. His salary that Chris Boucher actually ends up providing is very, very valuable to especially a team like the Denver Nuggets. Look at his cutting ability. Look at his ability to knock down three-point shots. Chris Boucher is not only a good basketball player, but his salary is very good, as we get distracted by these highlights here now at this point. But looking at the Denver Nuggets, you can take a look at the stats and look at what's going on. Of course, they're going to be paying Nikola Jokic a lot of money for a very long time. Of course, they're going to be paying Jamal Murray. Even regardless of how good he's been, Team Canada, some people soured on his ability and stuff, but he's moving up to the $50 million per year range. And clearly, this team is still a championship contender with Jokic, with Murray, and then the rest of the roster is an interesting spot. Of course, Aaron Gordon's a guy you want to keep on the roster, but Michael Porter Jr. has had some ups and downs, but having him at that price point over the next 3 seasons, it is an interesting contract, especially for a team that might be looking for upgrades, might be looking for improvements. And the guy that really has been a blight, and looking at Nuggets Reddit, looking at Nuggets fan base, a guy that they're not super happy with right now is Zeke Naji, who right now is under contract for the next guaranteed 3 seasons at roughly $8 million per year. And that's not a huge number annually, but that money being locked in on your books for multiple seasons is a very, very tough pill to swallow when you're a team that's trying to finesse, trying to make the right moves, trying to make the right adjustments around the edges to build a roster around Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic and, of course, Aaron Gordon. So there was a lot of, once this report came out, there's a lot of discussion about how, hey, a deal regarding Chris Boucher for Zeke Naji, in terms of those being the 2 players, swapped up completely, makes a ton of sense. Now, Zeke Naji is not great, and he's not super young now at this point either. 24 years old. He's pretty young. Hasn't got a ton of opportunities as of late. He was a guy that the Nuggets really liked early on, but frankly, he is out of their rotation right now. And he seemingly could shoot threes and had an interesting frame in his first few seasons, showed some potential, but over the last couple of years, a lot of Nuggets fans, the organization, given their draft, they just recently drafted someone that plays a very similar position, but Zeke Naji is kind of out of the future plans for the Denver Nuggets, it feels like. He's not getting run, he's not in the rotation, and he just doesn't really fit what they're doing here now at this point. And of course, you look at the contract, he's making $8 million per year annually over the next 3 seasons. So that's 2 years ago, before all these new cap rules, before the hard cap set in, before all that type of stuff happened, that might not be a big deal. When this contract signed, it might not be that big of a deal. But now with huge contracts incoming for Jamal Murray, and it's already started for Nikola Jokic, you still have Michael Porter, you have Aaron Gordon out there on the roster. That's some guaranteed money that is tough to get off your books. There's not going to be a lot of teams interested taking on, 3 years of guaranteed money for a guy you're not sure can actually be a valuable piece out there in the NBA. So that's where I trade straight up Chris Boucher, who is a solid piece, who's an expiring contract as well. There's lack of flexibility, but can also be an impact player for this year. For Zeke Naji, who gets you off the books, would be a very, very valuable piece for the Denver Nuggets. But of course, the Raptors, that's a tough contract to bring back. That's not something the Raptors can easily trade. They're just not going to eat that for nothing, just for the potential to rehabilitate a guy that maybe in a Raptor system makes a ton of sense. Well, the Nuggets don't have a ton of draft picks to really play with, seconds and stuff like that. So if they are desperate to get off the cap, they could attach a 2026 first. They could attach one of these first round picks to make this deal happen. 2030 pick, whatever the heck it is. If we can get a first for Chris Boucher, and even if we have to take on, it's not a horrific salary, but it's more impactful to a team that's over the tax. I mean, if we can get something like that for Chris Boucher, that would be a super good finesse for the Toronto Raptors. And of course, the Nuggets are going to be a later round first team, so maybe they're more willing to give up a first round pick to get that salary flexibility. And if they are very desperate for some salary cap flexibility, I mean, taking a flyer, not just on Zeke Naji, but on a Michael Porter Jr., who has also has 3 years left on his deal, including this one, and is dealing with injuries and stuff. Of course, he's a good basketball player, but the Raptors could take on some of that money, take on a piece that does have some talent. Again, could be rehabilitated in terms of value out here for the Raptors. I mean, it could be an interesting fit around Scottie Barnes, especially for this upcoming next season. You give the Nuggets some cap flexibility. You take on a first-round pick to make something happen. I mean, if they're interested in Chris Boucher, we know they're interested in Bruce Brown. They won a championship with him. I mean, Bruce Brown has a Nuggets tattoo out there on his shoulder. I mean, a deal like this just makes a ton of sense. Again, for the Toronto Raptors, you get a pick, you get an interesting piece. You're not too worried about being super flexible, doing these types of moves right here, right now in terms of immediate wins. But, you take on a piece that might be able to thrive out here in this Raptor system. I mean, this does seem like a move that is intriguing to be on surface level. If the cap flexibility and stuff is taken to mind, you might be like, Ben, you're delusional. Why the heck would the Nuggets do this? Well, this hard cap is hitting teams hard. And frankly, the Raptors might be able to slide in and finesse one of these things happening. So whether it's a Zeke Naji trade and we get a first for it, whether it's a Michael Porter Jr. trade, we get a first for it. I mean, those are two deals I'm very, very intrigued by. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. You guys best thing as far as subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.